Good morning. Thank you for coming. Although we here in the sanctuary are few, we probably wouldn't need a microphone, but we are streaming and recording. So good morning, happy Sabbath. I do see numerous cars moving around out in the parking lot and people walking in, so I think we're going to fill up here very quickly. But let's bow our heads for a word of prayer before we let Bryan present. Gracious Lord, we thank you for your Sabbath day. We thank you that you have woken us up this morning, that you've given us breath in our lungs, that you've given us thoughts in our minds. And we thank you for our church family. We thank you that you've brought us here together today. We ask that you bring all those others who are on the road or preparing to come this morning safety as they travel in. And Lord, I ask that you would anoint Bryan with your Holy Spirit this morning as he shares. Help us to learn as well. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Bryan, it is yours.
All right. Be patient. Hold on. Something changed. Not sure. Yep. No worries. Oh, there we go. Great, thank you. Okay, so your prayer. So I have a background in improv. So we're actually going to start with an improv story, and we're going to tell it together, so I'm going to come down here for this. So once upon a time, there was a nurse named, what's the nurse's name? Help me out. Whoa, what? Betty, thank you, Betty the nurse. And she worked at the hospital. Which hospital did she work at? Providence. Oh, we're all in a unison there. Okay, Betty worked at Providence, right. Worked at Providence, and every Tuesday, the plan was to go to the grocery store, pick up some stuff for veggie taco night, so she would always go to the grocery store, pick up stuff, and she has her cart full of stuff. She has to get home to make the tacos, and so she chooses the quickest lane possible to check out, but of course, that lane is not the quickest, because there's someone in front of her that is slowing everything down. What is this person doing to slow down the process? Clipping coupons, that's right. Not just one or two, but like 30 coupons. Pulls them out of the purse, puts them out, drops on the floor. So Betty starts to get a little irritated, a little frustrated. And normally she's cool, calm, collected, but this day she's running a little bit late, right? She had to finish some extra paperwork before she left. And so she mumbles something under her breath. What does she say underneath her breath? Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And of course, that makes the person who's working the coupons look at her, shake their head, and goes even slower just to annoy her, right? So this person finally finishes, checks out, and when Betty gets up to actually have her turn to check out, she looks at the cashier. She suddenly notices the cashier, it says, in training. And the cashier says something to apologize, as if the cashier is responsible for the previous patron's activities. And what does the cashier say? Sorry you had to wait. That's right, sorry I had to wait. And it's not just Betty in line. The line is starting to stack up. And someone else says something in the back of the line because we've just been waiting there with no movement. And what does the cashier hear someone else say? Hurry up. Again, that's twice. Hurry up, hurry up. The cashier gets a little bit flustered, right? The person's trying to scan stuff, it's taking longer than necessary. She's looking in the bag. Okay, what's in here? How many cilantro is this? Betty says, there's 3 in there. Let's just get a move on. Finally, after a long time, Betty gets her bags, goes out. She gets into her car, throws it in reverse, and she gently clips the edge of another vehicle. She pops out, looks, see, that's not that big of a deal. It's just a light scratch. I got to get home anyways. Goes home. 15 minutes later, someone else comes out of the grocery store. Goes to their new, what kind of vehicle is it? A Corvette, that's right. Walks to the Corvette, and they just got the Corvette 2 weeks ago. They back up, and they see right there on the edge, right near the gas tank, there's a little slight, tiny little scratch. Fresh paint job, my red Corvette, really frustrated. Gets in the Corvette, is driving like a maniac down the road, cuts someone off on the freeway. That person is in their truck, how dare you cut me off? All of a sudden, this truck person tries to catch the Corvette, but the Corvette's way too fast. So the person's in the truck, gets home, upset, walks in the door, the dog walks towards them, and what does this person do? So we've heard this story before. Kicks the dog. The dog is not usually treated in this way, but the dog is not like this. So the dog goes outside. One of the kids at home tries to go and console the little dog. It's okay. The parent was just upset. It's okay. But the dog is not having any of it. Like, this is not normal for this family. So the dog digs a hole, climbs underneath the fence, and runs to the park. There are other people at the park. And one of the kids comes up to the dog, and what happens? Okay, dog bites the kid. Now, this is not normal for the dog, but the dog is upset, right? So these are new parents with his young child. So dog bites the kid on the leg, and the parents pick up the kid, back, get away, dog. And so they take the kid home. Kid is crying, is not used to having, it's kind of traumatic for this kid. And they're like, okay, well, this is okay. In the morning, like, the bite mark looks kind of red, like, we should probably take this little girl in just to get checked, double checked. They go into Providence, and who do they see? Betty. Good. So, whose fault is it that this happened? Her anxiety. Okay, whose anxiety? Okay, so it's Betty's fault. Is that right? It's everyone's fault. What do you mean? Who perpetuated it? Every person in the link, even the pet, perpetuated this. Are we seeing this? At any point in time, this could have been stopped and interrupted. At any point. But this is the story that we made up is what typically happens, right? Anxiety and stress are passed from person to person to person to person, and we just keep on passing it down the line like hot potatoes. So I want us to see that we are all brokers in anxiety. We pass it in our family, in our culture, in our friends. So before I learned about relational triangles, I would see someone else's problem, and I would wonder, is this my problem to fix? As a good Christian boy, one of the things I've learned is we're supposed to help others, right? Carry each other's burdens. And I think, given the context of that verse, sometimes it's taken out of context, and people use that as an excuse to get involved in other people's stuff when it's not your responsibility to. We're going to be exploring that some of today. And I want you to be thinking about this. It ran in my family until it ran into me. You have an opportunity to change how you broker or don't broker anxiety in your family and amongst your friends, in this church family. At any point in time, you can stop the hot potato passing. So by the end of the seminar today, this morning we'll talk about these two things. Understanding the formation, attributes, and dynamics of relational triangles. We'll talk about that this morning. We'll also kind of dip our toe into the different roles and positions in a triangle that we play. And this afternoon, we'll be talking about the instability of that triangle and how we can detriangle ourselves. So this morning, we're doing the blue, and this afternoon, we'll be finishing this up. So this little picture here, let me solve this problem for you. I'm assuming these are twins. If these twins are continuing in the same behavior, so they're very young here, right? Let's say they continue the same behavior till they're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. What's going to happen? Codependency. So one person is dependent on the other to get food to their mouth, right? And if this is what we're used to and this is what we continue, it's going to look a little bit odd to see me belly up to the table and my twin sits next to me, and I go, I'm ready, open my mouth, assuming that they're going to do the same sort of thing. We train people in our families, and I mean train, we condition people in our families like we would train a pet, how we want them to interact with us. And if this is acceptable, every behavior is a symptom of this system. We talked about this last night. And if this is acceptable in the family, this person will learn that their job is to take care of other people's needs and not take care of their own. And this person might learn it's other people's job to take care of my needs. And they both have a role in the family, and we both know how we fit in. And it works perfectly, because I learn to take care of you, and I learn to be taken care of, right? So the purpose of this two-part presentation is to understand what relational triangles are. Any engineers here this morning? Okay, let's get a microphone out here. So talk to us about triangles in engineering.
Well, the sum of the angles is always 180 degrees, yep. You can have equilateral triangles, right triangles, obtuse, acute.
Okay, so now we're talking about different types of triangles. Tell me about what kind of roles triangles play when you're building something.
They pass stress from one member to another.
They pass stress from one member to another. So what happens when there's a lot of load on the top of the triangle? What happens?
It will try to collapse.
The triangle collapse, right. Okay. Now, whether or not the triangle collapses, what kind of contributes to that?
Depending on how it's fastened in the bottom,
Okay.
how many other members it can share the load with.
Okay, okay, great. That's as much as I'm comfortable hearing. So, similarly, I want you to think of triangles as one of the strongest relational triangles, as one of the strongest structures in relationships. Because the triangle can experience some stress, and that can be dispersed amongst the rest of the people in the triangle. Triangles are the basic emotional building blocks of relationships. This morning, I'm not acting as a licensed marriage and family therapist. Instead, I think of this more just a certified family life educator, talking about triangles, the things we talk about here. I'm not doing any direct application this morning because I don't know your unique circumstances. We're talking more theoretically. We'll do some application, but when there's issues of safety, someone's safety, you might have to take a different approach. We on board with that? Okay, great. So sometimes people think they are the hero coming to the rescue, and they accept the invitation of other people to get involved in their unresolved conflict, and then they have no more emotional capacity to take care of their own business. So they run around helping other people solve things, but they have a lot of unresolved stuff in their own life, in their own home. So when I talked with Ryan, as we were preparing for me to come here, I asked several questions about the church family, what you were all interested in, and I think we're all on the same page. So I want to do a little drum roll and think about your favorite family topic, what you want to learn about today. And on the count of 3, we're going to say that family topic out loud. Okay? Have it in your mind, your favorite family topic. Count of 3, we're going to say it out loud. Ready? 1, 2, 3. In-laws. We're learning about in-laws today. So, Genesis 27. In the original Hebrew Bible, we did not have these chapter breaks, nor did we have these sweet chapter summaries. These were added in later. Genesis 27, this is Jacob's deception. This is when Jacob is deceiving his father Isaac to get the blessing. And if you look at chapter 27, now it came about when Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see that he called his older son Esau to him, "My son." He said to him, "Here I am." Then Isaac said, "Behold, now I am old and I do not know the day of my death. Now then, please take your gear, your quiver, your bow, go out to the field to hunt some game for me." And here's the sweet part. "Prepare a delicious meal for me, such as I love, and bring that to me so I may eat, so my soul may bless before I die." Now Rebekah, the wife of Isaac, hears this and goes, "You know what? I need to go talk to my favorite son, Jacob." Right? Let's talk to her son, Jacob. "Behold, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying," this whole thing. Then she concocts this whole plan. So this description right here, Jacob's deception. Is it Jacob's deception, or who's behind the scenes pulling the strings? Rebekah. Okay, good. Why is she doing this? Why is she pulling the strings? Let's get a microphone out here. Yeah, say it again.
She has personal interest in the outcome.
She has personal interest in the outcome. Tell me more. We just know she has personal. That's enough. Okay, great. We'll tag team this.
Well, she knows what God's told her.
She knows what God has told her, right? That the older son will serve the younger. Okay, great, good. Tell me more about this personal interest. Why would she care?
She wanted her favorite son to get the blessing.
She wanted her favorite son to get the blessing. Why? What? Oh, I love this. Tell me more about this lifestyle.
She favored her other son
Yes.
because of his lifestyle was what the lifestyle she wanted for him, and it was her lifestyle.
Yes. Remember, Esau's out in the field hunting. Jacob's in the tent hold. And so mom is able to tell and teach Jacob the right way to run the tent hold. So if she can be with her favorite son, maybe he will continue to run business as usual at home in the appropriate fashion, right? That's right. And if her eldest son, who has already swindled his brother, traded some stew and some bread for the birthright, if her favorite son Jacob would get the birthright and now get the blessing, for all intents and purposes, he will be the favored son of the family. So he's going to receive more resources. He had all that stuff, the blessing. But what's driving this? I think there's something else at play in this story. And unfortunately, we're cut off here because we think this story starts at verse 1 of chapter 27. Go ahead.
The Messiah's promise.
The Messiah's promise, absolutely.
That's a big part of it.
Is a big part of it. But more immediately, there's something else happening in the family. Let's look at this. Imagine there's no chapter break. Imagine this is where the story starts. When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, the daughter of Beri, the Hittite, and Basemath, sweet name, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite, and they brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. If this is where the story starts, Esau marries two women that do not get along with Isaac and Rebekah, and that brings grief to them. This is the baseline. Rebekah does not get along with her daughters-in-law. And then she hears this, so imagine this idea. My non-favorite son, Esau, with these daughters-in-law that I can't stand, if he gets the blessing, he might be treated like the firstborn, and I will have to stay with this family for financial security. And I cannot stand my daughters-in-law. What can I do to change this situation? How does she change it? This sweet plan so that she doesn't have to deal with her daughters-in-law. Listen to the story. Let's keep going with this in mind. So after the whole deception, Esau held this grudge against Jacob because of the blessing which was his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, notice this is half of one verse, the days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob. So in one sentence, he says this. Look what Rebekah does when she calls Jacob to him. She takes this one sentence and she expands it. She amplifies it. She makes a big deal about this. Jacob, come here. Behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you by planning to kill you. Now then, my son, here's my sweet plan. Obey my voice and arise. Flee to Haran, Padam-aram, where my family came from, to my brother Laban. Stay with him a few days until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides, and he forgets what you did to him. Then I will send word to you and get you from there. Why should I lose both in one day? And then Rebekah turns and goes to Isaac, pulling some other strings. Isaac, I just can't stand this. I am tired of living because of these daughters of Heth, my daughters-in-law. I cannot stand them. If Jacob takes a wife from the daughters of Heth, like these from the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me? She's trying to find a daughter-in-law that she can get along with. So in the next chapter, so Isaac calls Jacob and blessed him and commanded him, saying to him, you shall not take wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padam-aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and from there take to yourself a wife from the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. So the task is very clear. I don't like these daughters-in-law. I want to have a daughter-in-law that I can get along with, specifically one from my family that does things the correct way. So I'm going to have my favorite son dress up like his hairy older brother, swindle this father, so it's abuse, elder abuse, financial abuse, blessing abuse, you could say spiritual abuse, so that he can get the blessing, and then I'm going to send him off so that he can go get a daughter-in-law that I can get along with, and then bring her back here. That's her plan, because she can't get along with her in-laws. This family also struggled with in-laws. I don't know if other families around here have that sort of experience, because the problem with in-laws is they do things differently, right? And sometimes it feels like they do things wrong. It's probably they just do some things differently, and I don't like it, but not right and wrong, but it can feel wrong, because that's not the way that I do things. And so then there's some differences, and there's some clashing. So Rebekah's opportunities for resolving the tension with the Hittite daughters-in-law, she could have prayed about it. She could have applied the Matthew 18 principles. She could have held a family meeting with Esau and the daughters-in-law to have a conversation. She could have agreed to disagree, but instead she decided to convince her favorite son to dress up in goat skin and swindle the blessing from her legally blind husband, and then scare Jacob out of town to obtain an approved wife from her family back in Padamaran. That's her solution. And this solution, what happened to the family because of this? Split, separated, right? Oftentimes, when there's anxiety within our family relationships, we end up doing things that have long-term consequences that we aren't fully thinking about because we're trying to solve the immediate problem. Okay. So what happens when when the servant goes to, we're going to back up a few chapters, and the servant goes to find a wife for Isaac, to find Rebekah. We know about what Laban and his family are like. I think there are some other reasons why Rebekah is doing this, pulling the strings behind the scene. Let's look at this. So this servant came and he finds Rebekah, and he took a gold ring weighing half a shekel, heavy, and 2 bracelets for her wrist weighing 10 shekels in gold, so she's laden down with gold. And then Abraham's servant said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not abandoned his kindness and his trustworthiness towards my master. As for me, the Lord has guided me in the way to the house of my master's brother." Then the young woman, Rebekah, ran and told her mother's household about these things. Notice, this is identified as her mother's household. Typically, in the Bible, is it the mother's household or the father's household? Father's house. So already, previously, the narrator is telling us there's something different about this family. Now, Rebekah, who had a brother whose name was Laban, and Laban ran outside to meet the man at the string. When he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists, and when he heard the words of his sister Rebekah saying, "This is what the man said to me," what this man said to me. He went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. So the reason Laban went out, the reason he ran outside, which is not culturally appropriate, was because he learned this man was wealthy. So he was running out, so he's interested in wealth. Laban runs towards wealth. When he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists, and when he heard the words of his sister, and Laban said to this servant, "Come in, blessed of the Lord. Why do you stand outside since I have prepared the house and a place for the camels?" He's really interested in those camels. Camels are much more valuable than other 4-legged creatures. Why? They can travel longer distances without water. So he's really interested in the fleet of Teslas that this servant has, and he runs out to take care of. Let me take care of you, and where can I park these Teslas for you? How can I take care of these for you? He's trying to ingratiate himself because he's interested in this wealth. Then Laban unloaded the camels, and he gave straw and feed to the camels, later to wash the feet. Then Laban and Bethuel replied, "The matter has come from the Lord, and so we cannot speak to you bad or good. Here's Rebekah before you. Take her and go and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord had spoken." So Laban and Bethuel, both of them together, are speaking. Bethuel is the father. Laban is speaking with the father, but this father is not speaking by himself. Are we seeing that? So it's the mother's household. Instead of this father speaking, Laban is there speaking with the father, acting in that behalf as the father role. The servant brought articles of silver, articles of gold, and garments, and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave precious things to her brother and to her mother, but did not give precious things to the father. Are we seeing this? So what could be happening in this family? One potential understanding is this: the father is the figurehead of the family, but it's called the mother's household, and the eldest brother Laban is the one speaking on behalf of the father. So maybe in this family that Rebekah and Laban were in, the father wasn't a major power figure. Are we seeing this? So, fast forward a few years. When Rebekah is trying to figure out, how do I make sure my favorite son gets the blessing from my partner, in my own family of origin, the playbook was, we just run things. We just pull strings. So what Rebekah is doing, she probably learned in her family of origin. At that point in time in Isaac's life, he was not as active. He was legally blind. He was trying to make some end-of-life decisions, but she was doing what she wanted to do. Just like in her own family, she saw other people doing what they wanted to do. So what Rebekah is doing, this is part of the family script. She's not making this up. She's following an old playbook. But her brother and her mother said, so notice after the servant has asked Rebekah to make a decision. Her brother, Laban, and her mother said, let the young woman stay with us a few days, and afterwards you may go. And then, however, the servant said to them, and then they said again, and then they called Rebekah. So the father, Bethuel, is not in this part down here. He's not very present. It's the mother and the brother making the decisions. So imagine now, if the mother and brother are supposed to make decisions, fast forward to Rebekah, hey, let's have the mother and the son make the decisions for the family. That's what's happening. Okay, detriangling is probably the most important technique in family systems therapy. So as a therapist, learning how to detriangulate myself is super important. Otherwise, I get sucked into other people's problems too much. And the more I get involved in the conflict between two people, the more I will experience the distress of that relationship. Those of you who like math, if you want to figure out how many triangles in the room, you can follow this. So if there are 3 people, there's 1 triangle. If there's 4 people, there's 4 triangles. If there are 300 people, there's 4.5 million triangles. Possible. So, nice picture. Yeah, we need to know how many triangles. So depending on how many people come over for Thanksgiving, there's lots of opportunities for triangulation. Not every relational triangle is active. Some are more latent, some are more passive, but some are definitely front and center. So we're going to look at some families and look at different things that happen when there's a triangle. All right, sit with me. An unstable dyad, so that's 2 people that experience conflict. So an unstable dyad can be stabilized by the addition of a third party. What does this mean? 2 people not getting along. As soon as another person comes, this can change the dynamic between these 2 individuals. What does this mean? Let's say there are 2 people in Sabbath school that are arguing over some sort of theology, and we're having a conversation. One says this, one says this, but in comes a new person with a cup of coffee. And they might disagree about theology, but they can agree that coffee is bad. So all of a sudden, we have a common enemy, and we can unite that this person is clearly in the wrong. And then when this person with the coffee leaves, we get back to arguing about our theology. In this situation, a stable dyad, so 2 people get along, can be destabilized by the addition of a third party. What does this mean? Let's say there's a couple, and they're trying to have kids. They experience infertility, which is part of the Abraham story. And then they were able to have a baby. All of a sudden, they are focusing more of their energy on caring for the baby. That means there's more distress in their relationship. So the relationship between 2 people, either here or here, can be changed when a third person enters into the room. So let's say you and your friend are having a conversation, and Pastor Ryan ends up going to the same restaurant. And he sees you, and you see him. That's probably going to adjust the social experience. Am I right? Right? So just by one person entering the room, that changes how 2 people get along. Okay, let's go to the next slide. An unstable dyad, so the conflict between them, can be stabilized by the removal of a third party. Now we're not just talking about people. It can be hobbies. It can be a TV show. It can be a sports event that's on TV. If 2 people have some distress, let's say these 2 people are, let's say they're watching a Mariners game, and one person is a Mariners fan, the other person is a Red Sox fan. While they're watching the game, there's some contention between them. It might be playful. It may not be. Some contention between them. But then when the game is done, that might change their relationship. Same over here. A stable dyad can be, so they get along, can be destabilized by the removal of a third party. So let's go back to the Sabbath school experience. 2 people get along, and there's a Sabbath school leader that is a really good facilitator. Make sure everybody is heard, move this discussion along, and there's some 2 powerful personalities. But this great Sabbath school leader is able to manage those strong personalities to kind of keep everything's going. But then it's all of a sudden this person moves down to Auburn. So we no longer have this great Sabbath school leader. What's going to happen to these 2 powerful personalities? They might start to experience some distress. So their relationship changes, and after the sports game is done, these 2 start to get along. What does this mean? It means regardless of whether or not 2 people experience conflict or 2 people get along, the removal of or the addition of a third party can change the relationship between those 2 people. Let's run this back. 2 people who get along or 2 people who don't get along, if you remove or add a third person in the mix, that can change what happens between the first two people. How are you feeling about this idea? Raise your hand if you feel like you kind of understand this a little bit. May not be convinced, but at least you understand it. Okay, good. So I want you to entertain this paradigm shift. Relationships are about threes. Threes, not twos. Threes, not twos. There's always a third party. They may not be physically present, but they're definitely psychologically present. Even Adam and Eve were not by themselves, right? Relationships are about threes, not twos. And if we can see it this way, sometimes the conflict that two partners have in their lives, or between a parent and a child, or two roommates, or two people at school, may not just be about those two people. There's something else involved. Either a hobby, or a dream, or an addiction, or work, or an in-law, or a friend, whatever it is, it's not just two people. Relationships are about threes, not twos. Triangles are the basic building blocks of emotional systems. So family is an emotional system. A relational triangle is a three-person emotional configuration when one relationship gets intertwined with the addition of a third person, party, object, substance, pet, house, belonging, whatever it is. So there are so many different triangles that we are in. They're not all active, but some are definitely more front and center. And relationships are about threes. And it's not just threes. You can have two triangles sharing the same point, right? You can have interlocking triangles. So I want you to start to think of everything as, okay, it's not twos, it's threes, and there's a huge social, emotional structure within our families, within our church families, built on triangles. And if we can see it all as triangles, we can start to understand why some triangles are tricky and some are easy to navigate. So in a two-person relationship, they can handle enough tension until it gets too much for those two people to bear, and they try and find a third person to join. So if their anxiety increases beyond the load that they're able to handle, they need to find an outlet or an ally or a scapegoat to share some of the load of that distress. That's why triangles are powerful for emotional configurations, because we can spread the anxiety around the three people. If I am, let's say it's summertime and I'm near the pool on a hot day and the concrete is very, very hot. How am I going to move about the concrete? Tiptoe. Why tiptoe? Less contact. Good, good. Similar to if I'm trying to take potatoes out of the oven and I'm not smart enough to put on an oven mitt, I'd be trying to do it by my hands. How long do I want to contact those potatoes? Not long, as fast as possible, right? So what happens is we pass hot potatoes around in our relationships as fast as possible because no one wants to hold on to them because we get burned. So when anxiety comes our way, one of the things we want to do is pass on as fast as possible. And we end up passing it around the triangle. So distress in the dyad, I end up passing my anxiety down the line to the next person, to the triangle. This new person acts as my release, my ally or my scapegoat, so I can get rid of these hot potatoes. And what happens is, this is really like a multi-level marketing scheme, brokers in anxiety. I have some anxiety I can't handle, I need to find someone else to help me take care of it. A receptacle, someone to come and save me from this. And what happens is, then anxiety is passed around the system, all the unwanted stuff, and it's usually the people in the family that are the most vulnerable, the weakest, the most dependent, where the anxiety usually flows towards. Just like water flows downhill, anxiety flows down to the individual who is least able to protect themselves from it. Sometimes individuals like being the burden bearer of the family, and they will take on other people's anxiety, and that can weigh them down, and they might take pride in that, but they're going to pay a toll for that down the road. To the extent that you become responsible for or try to change the relationship between two other people, the more you will experience the distress of that relationship. So if I have two people that are not getting along, two neighbors that are not getting along, if I try and help them get along as a mediator, I will experience the distress of that relationship. If I get involved in other people's stuff, I personally will experience some of the distress of that conflict. So if I'm here and I want to get involved to try and help them just work it out, I will experience the distress of that relationship, even though this is not my relationship, right? This is their relationship, their issue. The more I get involved in their stuff, the more I experience the distress of that relationship. So if I have gloves and I try and go in and I'm trying to pull weeds out of the mud, I will usually get muddy gloves. I will rarely have glovey mud. The more you try and reach in to help, the more you'll experience the distress, the dysfunction of that relationship. What often happens is I experience distress, some area of life. I go to talk with someone, my mom, a confidant, a friend, and I share with them about what's happening over here, and I'm passing on distress to them. And they will form an opinion about the other person or the other party or whatever's happening, and I hope they will take my side. And in doing so, I have someone to help me with my distress. So anxiety is like this hot potato. We don't want to hold it for too long. We want to find someone else who's able to help me hold it. Most people in relationships are behaving in response to anxieties rather than each other. We think we are responding to our partner, to our roommate, to our child, to our parent, to our friend. But you are probably responding to the anxiety you experience in that relationship, not to them. It's hard to differentiate between those two. Triangling is both an emotional process and an anxiety binding process that shifts the anxiety. We just have this social agreement that we can pass these hot potatoes around this triangle and between different triangles. So we have this social agreement that we can do this. The challenge is some triangles feel stable and other triangles don't. We'll talk about this afternoon. And anxiety can be transferable and contagious. If I start yelling fire, fire, people are going to look around to find out where the fire is. We want to know what's going on. We want to respond to that. If someone says snake or rat or mouse, I'm guessing this place doesn't have those sort of vermin or rodents. But if we did that, people might pick up their legs off the floor, let's see what's happening. But different people respond differently to the same stimulus. If there is a dog that's running around here, or let's say a hamster, some people might love the idea of picking up a hamster. Other people, no thanks, hard pass, not interested. So different people in the family can respond to the same sort of stimuli, the same sort of anxiety in different ways. Because some people might see it as a threat, other people may not see it as a threat. So there's this domino effect amongst interlocking triangles, and you've probably heard or experienced this sort of thing when there's drama or gossip about a story that can be passed from person to person to person to person to person to person within the church family. Has that ever happened here? No? No? Raise your hand if you think it might have, not that you were a part of it, but you think that might have happened here. Okay, a few hands, okay. But you rated just enough so I could see, but not other people. Okay, that's good. That's good. Triangles are forever and can outlive the people in them. Just because one person in the triangle passes away or transfers to a new church or moves to New Jersey doesn't mean that the anxiety that they participated in disappears. It's still present. It's just redistributed amongst the rest of the family members. So a lot of the stress we deal with is not really our stress to deal with. A lot of the stress we deal with is not actually ours. It's other people shoveling it our direction, recruiting us to help with their stuff, or me wanting to go and help other people. So I do not like moving. There was a period in my life of 6 years, and I moved 7 times in 6 years because rent kept on going up, or whatever, the whole bunch of things. I needed to move. It's very unpleasant to pack up all my stuff in a box, that gross sound of the tape over the top, moving it, renting a U-Haul, or putting it in the car, and doing this over and over. I do not enjoy moving. What I like doing is helping other people move. Because I can walk into their house, say, what do you want me to do? And I throw everything in the box, tape it up, and I do not care. It is not my stuff. When it's my stuff, Oh yeah, I remember the time where I got this back in 4th grade. Oh, I got this at summer camp. Should I keep this shirt? So I'm trying to decide. It's my own stuff. It takes a lot more emotional capacity to deal with my own stuff. It's way easier to go in and just ruffle other people's stuff and move their boxes to the garage because I don't really have as much interest compared to my own stuff. I'd rather help 3 different people move than myself move once. Similarly, it's easier to deal with other people's stuff, and we get caught up dealing with other people's anxieties instead of our own. And a lot of stuff we deal with is not our own, it's others. So most people spend more of their energy working on other people's problems than we do working on our own problems. That's typically what happens. Why is triangling useful? Why do we do it? If we're just passing out potatoes, why do we do it? Well, it helps to disperse the load amongst the group. The less able a family or a church is able to manage their own individual distress, and the less able they are able to identify their own values, feelings, and reactivity as distinct and different from others, the more likely they will depend on passing the hot potatoes around the triangles as a way to stabilize the system. So if you were here before, we had this great little mini lecture about triangles. Structurally, when we use them, and we can disperse the load. The same thing happens. Many hands make light work. We have more people. We can just pass these hot potatoes around so that the whole system can be participating in handling all this load of the stress. Like this. So what ends up happening is we start juggling. We can't hold these hot potatoes for too long. So we start juggling them so we're not they're in the air. We don't want them to fall and splat. So we're juggling things. Here's one person juggling 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 different pins. Here's 2 people juggling these pins back. Oh, there's actually 3. 1, 2, 3 people juggling pins. Here, it gets a little more dangerous, right? We have an individual who is juggling chainsaws. Don't recommend this. Here, you're standing on other people's shoulders and you're juggling. And this is what happens when we're dealing with juggling dangerous stuff, or we're trying to rely on the system to make sure that none of these pins drop. This is a little more precarious than one person doing it. And if we have so much going on, it's really easy for batons to start hitting the ground. In a highly anxious and polarized families, churches, it becomes more difficult for the clinician, that's myself, to resist engaging in the triangle. Then objectivity is lost because I can't really see the context, and clinical intention is compromised. And now I want you to read this again. Instead of doing clinician, use me and my. So in highly anxious and polarized families and churches, it becomes more difficult for me to resist engaging in the triangle, engaging in other people's problems. Then my objectivity that I could have had as an outsider, my objectivity is lost because I'm in the thick of it, and my clinical intention is compromised. So my intention to help, that's a good intention, but as soon as I enter into the fray, I lose the perspective I had I been on the outside. So I sacrifice the perspective in order to try and help other people. Are they helpless, or do you just want to feel needed? Sometimes it feels good to help other people, right? I feel good. Other people like it. We all go home, we have this handshake. I helped you, you helped me. This is how society is supposed to work. And we tell ourselves stories about why we are supposed to participate in solving other people's problems. Maybe you say things like this: they need me. They need my help. They came to me specifically. I'm their pastor, Ryan. They are my friend, my family, my responsibility. It's my job to do this. I know what to do. I've been through this before. I have a whole bunch of wisdom that I can come and share with them so they can solve their problems. I'm a rescuer. I'm a helper. I'm a peacemaker. I'm the hero. I know how to fix this. Let me get in. Let me just show you what to do. It's really, really easy. Or I can take one for the team. These are stories we tell ourselves to justify us getting involved in other people's relationships, other people's unresolved challenges. So it's a good thing they called me, because I'm a neutral party and a great listener. Now, when I talk to the other person on your behalf, I need to hear their side of the story too. Blessed to be the middleman. And the more you get involved in their stuff, the more you experience the distress of that relationship. So you better know what you're giving up. You're giving up your objectivity, and you end up experiencing some of the distress of that relationship. And maybe it's them telling us narratives about why we need to get involved. Maybe they're saying, "You're so good at listening. You've always been supportive. Nobody understands me like you do. I can count on you. We need a mediator," or some of my favorite down here. "I'm just worried about so-and-so." And then here's them sharing the distress. Or, "I need your advice." And what they're trying to do, they're trying to get you involved in their business so they can get some help. And what happens is the more you get involved, the more you experience the distress of that relationship. Worry is often used as a way to justify gossip and triangulation. When I'm concerned about someone else, I will often turn to another person to get some recommendation about what I'm supposed to do in the situation. "Oh, really? Tell me more." Some people really like hearing about other people's problems. We really like it. We eat this up. There are some people in families that just want to hear about other people's drama. They get a kick out of it, and then they kick out of sharing it with other people as well. So a few weeks ago, I heard you had some snow, and it was cold here, right? There was some ice. And it seemed more like icy according to like the Instagram and TikTok videos of cars sliding down the street. It was more ice than snow. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. Has anyone lived or ever lived in the Midwest or the Northeast where there's snow? Okay, a couple hands. Okay. I don't know if you can see it here. This is some snow that's been plowed up close to this house. Is this snow soft and fluffy like powder? No. What's it like? Hard as a rock. Good. Here's this situation. There's a car that needs to get out of their driveway. Look at this big, I'm going to call it a boulder, of ice. And is this ice soft? Is this ice soft? No, this ice is hard. This snow soft? No, it's hard as ice. How is this person going to get out of their driveway? What? Dig it out. But how do you get out of this? Good luck. Good luck. You got to chip away at this. This person's not going to make it to work on time. Am I right? Okay. How about this situation? You can't even get into your garage now because the snowplow decided to deposit all of this packed snow right in front of your garage. You can't even, it might be difficult to even get in, especially if the garage door swings out, to get your shovel to start working on the snow to get your car out. This next picture happened in Michigan. There was a person who went into it's an auto supply store, and they did not like how they were treated. And a few weeks later, they were called in with their pickup truck with a plow in the front to plow the parking lot. And they were upset. So they pushed the snow right up to the door so that patrons would have to step over the snow to get into the store. He did this as a punishment to the manager. So we could conceive of a situation where let's say there's 6 neighbors on a block, and it snowed the night before. One person goes out, they shovel snow from their driveway, and they put all the snow on their neighbor's driveway. Now this neighbor comes out. Whoa, more snow than I was expecting. So I'm going to shovel my snow and the snow that was added to me on the next person's driveway. This person comes out. There's 3 people's snow on their driveway. But what do we do? What are the rules? Shovel it onto the next person. So what happens is more and more snow is passed down the block. Does the snow ever disappear? It just gets shoveled around. That's typically what happens in our families. Anxiety is just shoveled around. It's never dealt with. It's just shoveled around. Can you recall any examples in the Abrahamic story of any triangles in Abraham's family? Raise your hand high if you can think of any triangle in Abraham's family.
Abraham and Sarah and Hagar.
Good triangle. Awesome, good. Let's get another one. That was the only one?
Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael.
Oh, there we go. There's another triangle. Good. Let's get one more. Sarah, Hagar, and Ishmael. Mm-hmm.
Abraham, Lot, and their herdsmen.
Good. Abraham, Lot, and their herdsmen. Good. You just named 3 people, and that's going to be a triangle. So any answer, as long as you mention 3 parties, you would have gotten points for that quiz. But we don't actually need to actively participate in these triangles. That might be the rules in the family. You're expected to, but you get to decide how involved you are. When we allow ourselves to be triangulated, we don't actually remove any of the anxiety. Instead, we just shovel and spread it around to some other person. Or you say, no, please, put it onto my driveway. Everyone just put your snow onto my driveway, and I'll just figure it out later. The result? We perpetuate the practice of spreading anxiety to and from those that we love. So we might actually end up thinking a lot about their problems. Not able to sleep at night because we're worried about their problems. And when we are thinking about other people's problems or solving their problems, we are catching their anxiety. To the extent that you become responsible for or try to change the relationship to others, the more you will experience the stress of that relationship. And what happens to the system? The church system, the family system, people will become dependent on others to manage their anxiety. So like the third slide in, we had those twins, one is feeding the other. They get dependent on other people coming to deal with their snow. What happens is, person A might shovel snow onto person B's driveway. If we do this enough, person A might say, you know what would be really helpful? If I don't shovel this at all, if you can come and shovel my snow onto your driveway. And then person B says, well, I'm doing half it, might as well do the whole thing. So person B comes, shovels their snow onto their own driveway, and then they deal with it. Conflict is not managed directly, so similar to the story of Rebecca with the daughters-in-law she could not get along with, she did not deal with that directly. She did a very convoluted, roundabout scheme to solve her problem. Then nobody assumes responsibility for their own anxiety and unresolved conflict because we're all sharing it. Anxiety issues become stuck and frozen like that hard-packed snow in the family, and this prevents growth and compromises objectivity. And when we start to think that their problem, so some people's problems are our problem, but a lot of people's problems aren't our problem. And we need people to differentiate between, is it their problem, my problem? Is it their anxiety that I'm catching? Or is it my own anxiety? They can feel very similar. Where'd this snow come from? Is it my snow? Or is it partner's snow? Let's think about this before we just go shoveling. So, I've done quite a bit of talking. Let's do a little memory check. Let's just kind of make sure we're conceptually on the same page. So turn to some people around you, get in groups of like 2, 3, 4, 5, not bigger than 5, please, and try and answer these questions. What is a triangle, a relational triangle? How do they work, quote unquote? Why are triangles, not dyads, the basic building blocks of emotional systems? What are some reasons or narratives we tell ourselves so that we willingly participate in triangles? And what happens to us or the system when we choose to participate in those triangles? So turn to people around you, and let's talk through these questions. Who wants another minute? Raise your hand if you need another minute. Well, okay, I'm generous this morning. Get another minute. All right, Ryan, if you can run around with the microphone, por favor. Someone help me out. What is an answer you heard either from your group or from a group near to you that seemed like a pretty good answer? What is a triangle? How do they work? Good, I'm glad we're doing this. This is important.
Common interests.
Good, so people have
like personalities, like.
Yep. So usually some people have some common interests. Good, good. So what is a triangle and how do they work? How does this triangle work? How does this operate?
Load bearing.
Load bearing. What is it that they're bearing? Burden of stress. And how many people are in the triangle?
3 or more.
Oh, good. If it's more, then it's multiple triangles. If it's 3 people and you add another person, all of a sudden you've got 4 triangles actually. So there could be multiple triangles within a family, within a system. So it's a 3-person emotional configuration. How do they work? We spread anxiety around the triangle. We share the load. We share the distress amongst us. Why are triangles not dyads, the basic building blocks of emotional systems? Hand back there.
Because a third party changes the relationship?
Yeah, because the third party changes the relationship between those 2 people. The addition of a third party can smooth things out or ruffle the feathers. The removal of that person could smooth things out or ruffle the feathers. Right, it's not just 2 people, it's 3 people. Awesome. What are some reasons or stories or narratives or excuses or justifications we tell ourselves why we should participate in triangles and dealing with other people's business? Oh, this is good. Raise your hand so we can get this on record.
I can fix this.
I can fix this. Good. Give me another one.
What I struggle with is the Bible says bear one another's burdens.
Yes, yes. So we talked about at the very beginning. We'll talk about this at the end as well. To look at that, we'll definitely revisit that. But that is also a justification for why we're supposed to. But I think seeing the context, we can see a little bit differently. Yes?
They need me. I'm good with this.
They need me. Oh, this is my jam. I got this. This is in my wheelhouse. I know how to do this. Good. There's several reasons to justify our participation in other people's business. And what happens to us, or what happens to the system, when we continue to willingly participate in triangles? Tell me one of the consequences.
We become emotionally invested.
We become emotionally invested because we are part of it now, even though it's not necessarily ours to be a part of. Good. There's another hand. What else? What are some other consequences of us willingly participating in triangles?
We lose objectivity.
We lose objectivity. We get so into the thick of it, we can't really see the context as well. Sometimes we lose our perspective.
Question, if I'm in the presence of 2 or more people, do I have a choice as to whether I'm participating in a triangle? I thought that was by definition a triangle.
Good, good. Everyone hear that? If I'm in the presence of 2 other people, do I have a choice of whether or not to participate in the triangle? And the answer is yes. You're still part of the triangle, but you can choose to be a non-active member in that triangle. You can choose to be on the outside and not get involved in the business. If two people are playing in the mud, I can choose to jump into the mud if I want to, but I'm going to get muddy. Or I can choose to, this is your mud, not my mud. So I'm not going to be an active participant in this. Good. What happens, let's kind of take it another level. What happens to the system, not the individual, but the system if we continue to participate in triangles? What could happen?
They're going to get dependent.
Good. The system can be dependent on other people to solve problems. And less people start taking responsibility for their own issues because the expectation is someone else will deal with it.
You're giving the implication that these triangles are bad. At the same time, you're telling us they're the basic building blocks, and I don't quite know where you're going with this.
Ooh, I like this. Yeah, where's Bryan going with this? These are the basic building blocks, but then you're saying they're bad? Oh, I kind of want to leave it out there, dangling for this afternoon. But I'll give you a brief answer right now. How we participate in triangles can be maladaptive. How we participate in triangles can be dysfunctional. There are better ways to participate in triangles than what most of us typically do. We cannot escape triangles. Detriangulation is not about not being part of a triangle. You will be part of it, but you do not have to be an active participant that engages in the same brokering activity of pushing around anxiety. You can decide not to participate in that business. You can still be part of the triangle, but not in a dysfunctional manner. Oh, there's a question or a hand over here.
You just said that, you don't have to participate in a triangle. But let's say you are playing, we are related, you're playing in the mud, right? So the third party is the mud, right?
Mm-hmm.
It affects me. Although I'm not participating in it.
Mm-hmm. It still affects you.
It is affecting me.
Mm-hmm.
So how I'm not part of it?
So I'm experiencing some of the anxiety of the muddiness. So I better roll up my sleeves. Do I have to go and take care of your problem? Yeah. So the reason that two other people's distress affects me in the same way that adding that third party affects two people, what happens between two people definitely has some effect on me, absolutely. But if we start running around and being the hero and saving everybody else from their problems, we start to train them that they don't have the opportunity to develop the mastery to work on their own stuff. Yes?
It seems like what you're saying is the active participation in the triangle is the willingness to engage in the passing the stress around the triangle.
Yes.
And the detriangulating doesn't mean that I'm no longer part of that triad, but that I'm no longer participating in the active passing of the stress.
Yes. So I'm no longer accepting those invitations to participate. I'm no longer jumping into other people's business, volunteering myself. I'm able to distinguish what is my problem, what is other people's problem. Is this your anxiety, is this my anxiety?
If I'm not actively passing the stress around, does that mean I'm not going to receive stress, though? To her point,
some people might try and knock on your door and sell you something, but you don't have to buy it. Some people may try and invite you to participate, but you can let them know, and we'll talk about this later this afternoon, how do you do that? When people are trying to pass stuff to you, how do you respond to that?
If you have a family member that's floundering and struggling to manage their situation, will that not be, is it my choice to not be concerned about that, to not feel stress as a result of that, even if I'm not pushing that stress around to other people?
You do have a choice. Now, we're kind of moving into the area that I talked about at the very beginning. When there's safety involved, we have to adjust this. But I'm trying to lean out hard in the opposite direction of what we normally do and say, if we normally participate and we're brokers of anxiety, let's lean out hard in the opposite direction, and let's look at this and notice that we have a choice in what we do. We don't have to continue the same pattern that was taught to us, passed down from generation to generation, or the rules or expectations in this family or the church family. We do not necessarily have to move about in the same way. And we'll talk about more later on this afternoon. What do we do? How do we not be an active participant? So, looking at the time, we have a little bit of time left, so I'm going to start this. When you think about our participation, I want to look at the role and the position that each of us has in a triangle. The role and the position. The role. We could play one of three roles, and I have done all three of these in different triangles. I can generate anxiety. I can introduce the thing that we should be worried about. I can amplify the anxiety. I can make a big deal out of it. Or I can dampen the anxiety. I can introduce, I can amplify, or I can dampen. And each triangle does not necessarily have all of these in one triangle. So what I mean is there's not always one generator, one amplifier, one dampener. And just because you choose one role or you adopt one role doesn't mean you're stuck in that role. I can introduce, I can generate some anxiety, and if no one's picking up on it, I can amplify it to make sure other people see this is a big issue, I need some help with it. So, what do these mean? An anxiety generator is the person who kind of brings their anxiety as a +1 to the party. They bring their unresolved conflict, and they are hoping that other people will take notice and help them with this anxiety. The amplifier is someone who catches this anxiety and then reacts to it, makes a big deal about it, or doesn't make a big deal about it, and that can actually elevate the stress of the first person. So let's imagine let's say there's a 13-year-old boy who comes home and he says, "Mom, I'm getting picked on at school." The mother could say, "What? I'm going to call the principal. In fact, get in the car. We're going to drive down there right now. We're going to talk to your teacher. We're going to talk to the principal. We're going to talk to all the administrators, and we're going to get this thing sorted. Who is the kid? Give me their number. I'm going to call them right now." Making a big deal about it, amplifying it, right? The other option is she can go, "Kids will be kids, not that big of a deal." And now this 13-year-old boy who had the courage to eventually talk about this bullying that's happening had just been shut down and been told their big problem isn't that big of a deal. And that in itself is amplifying the anxiety. Because I'm trying to come to someone to help me, and they're trying to dismiss it is not that big of a deal. And now I'm even more concerned because now I have nobody to help me. So the amplifier, in their attempt to dampen, might actually amplify the anxiety. Are you feeling that? Inadvertently, they're not trying to, but that's the result of how, maybe they're trying to not make a big deal about it, but in doing so, they're actually reacting to it in such a way that amplifies the anxiety. Then the dampener is actually someone who calms down the distress in a non-reactive way, and this will reduce the anxiety. So what we would want this mother to actually do is like, "Oh no, thank you for coming to me to talk about this. Okay. All right. Now, as a parent, you have some responsibility for the child, right? So as a parent, you might want to use we language. We do this. Or you might want to say, "Okay, what do you need?" And attending to the problem, but not catching the anxiety. And later on this afternoon, we'll talk about how to slice it real thin, differentiate between getting involved in other people's business versus empowering them to do so. But the mother's response can dampen the anxiety, or it might amplify it, depending on what's happening. So we can generate, amplify, or dampen, and these are often subconscious processes. We're not even thinking about it. They just happen. I have done all of these in different triangles, and what we want to try and do more often than not is be a dampener, but that's really hard when we are used to doing these two things. To generate, to shovel it from one triangle to another. Whoa, this is a big deal, move it on to another triangle. But when a stressful moment is met with stress to amplify, that distress can grow. When it's met with calm, it can get smaller. If someone is distressed and you dismiss them, you're doing this. If you dismiss their distress, that's going to amplify it for them. So I'm not saying that the dampener dismisses. Okay, why are you dragging all this negativity in the triangle? Because it needed to be brought to your attention. You know I can't resist making mountains out of molehills, so that's amplifying. This isn't even my molehill. I don't care whose it is because it's mine now. So we're out of time. At the very beginning of this afternoon, we will have a little question about what roles we play, kind of a little quiz like we did before, but let's cut it off now so we can transition to the next part. Cool.
All right, so it's about 10:45, so we'll be right back here for church at 11. So this is your break, and those of us in charge will get ourselves set up.